Good to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 22nd, 2021 Park and Recs Commission Luther Burbank Docks Subcommittee video meeting. I'm Peter Struck, Subcommittee Chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, this afternoon's Park and Rec Subcommittee meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff Ryan Daly and Paul West are participating in this afternoon's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting via telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones, and will the city staff please call the roll?
Commissioner Struck.
Here.
Commissioner Westberg.
Here.
Commissioner Gualtieri.
Here.
Thank you.
Participants, before we start the business of this afternoon's meeting, I want to suggest a few rules to help the meeting to run smoothly. We are going to be less formal than in full commission meetings. Please step in to speak when you sense that the previous speaker has finished. I ask that everyone be observant and allow commissioners equal access to speak. You still may use the raised hand feature if you want to step into the conversation. Please mute your microphone if you do not anticipate speaking in the current discussion. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. This afternoon's agenda will not include public appearances. However, individuals wishing to make comments on the subcommittee business today can use the comment feature on the Let's Talk project page or email Paul West, the project manager. This project is also scheduled to be discussed at the Parks and Recreation Commission's regular meeting on March 4th, 2021, where there will be the opportunity for public appearance via Zoom. To briefly preview the agenda for this afternoon, we're going to review the draft concept product with Paul West leading. We're going to review the preferred concept with evaluation criteria document, again with Paul West leading. We'll discuss any unresolved issues and additional input, and I'll head that discussion. Fourth, some grant funding issues that Paul will talk about. And then finally, we'll talk briefly about our presentation from the subcommittee to the full commission on March 4th regarding this topic. So with that, Paul, maybe are you going to share your screen on the draft product, or how you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
And I'll take. All right. So I will apologize that you got this so late. There was a miscommunication between me and the consultant. So it only got to you mid-morning today. So you may or may not have had time to look at it. And I just want to remind you that last time we went through all the elements that were on that list and we made decisions about most of them, and the decisions that were made are now hopefully reflected on this document, and also in that summary list that I sent out on Saturday night. So we're going to go through both just to make sure it's the way we want it to show to the commission. A reminder that this showing at the commission on March 4th is not the final showing. That's the first showing to the commission. We'll take feedback from the commission on March 4th and discuss any revisions that we need at our subcommittee March 10th meeting. So this is still not set in stone. It has a couple more rounds of review before it is ready to go to City Council. So just to briefly go through this diagram, we have, I'm just going to start at the top. We have a concession stand that we discussed last time. It's just showing it as an existing concession stand. The last meeting, we asked for a limited amount of new seating. So we located seating benches along the east wall of the boiler building, which is where they've typically been. The accessible path to the plaza has remained unchanged since the last time. Minimizing tree impacts from the wider beach was a discussion topic last time, so that's shown now. Wider cobble beach is shown now. Kayak launching from the cobble beach is shown. The accessible path to the cobble beach is the same as it was last time. Retaining the Hanson bollards is now shown. Steps to the water is shown with aspirational element as a note, meaning that we have to see if we can get that permitted. The dock configuration is essentially the same as last time. And then going up the side here, we're showing that we're going to replace the existing trees and locate one picnic table generally in this bubble area, showing that we're replacing the paving in the plaza with materials to be determined. The rooftop classroom and viewpoint over the existing restrooms, and the ADA path to the plaza that connects the plaza to the classroom is shown. And we probably want to show that this spur going up the hill is a future project. I just caught that. So that's what's shown graphically. And then there's a set of notes on the side here that also reflect the elements that we discussed last time. And to cover those, I think I'm going to switch now to the Exhibit 1B, which is the elements, the list of elements and their status. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to stick on Exhibit 1A. Last time we just talked about the assumption is that the boiler building will be repurposed at some point. Last time we talked about adding 1 or 2 interpretive signs and wayfinding in unobtrusive locations consistent with the styles of the rest of the park. We talked a little bit about removing the existing kiosk. I made a case for replacing it with a new style of kiosk in an unobtrusive location, but I was unclear at the end of the meeting where the commission stood on that, so we'll revisit that today. Providing lighting for safety only was a commission direction from last meeting. Providing planters and hanging baskets as an operational program was a direction from the last meeting. Additional beach elements, we talked about instead of having a concrete ramp to the water, just providing removable mats to access the cobblestone beach seasonally, and then locating some naturalistic seating like a log at the beach instead of having a concrete bench. Those are the things that are currently on the graphic plan. Now let's go to the list of elements. Like I said, the docks are the same as last time. We will discuss one issue that may change the graphic later in the agenda, so I'm not going to cover that right now. And then I think we've covered almost everything here on this list. We have the ramp. This is not included on the list, but then the ramp, the commission wanted the ramp to ordinary high water to be designed with naturalistic materials. In other words, not just a concrete ramp with a steel railing, but crushed gravel surface, maybe log or stone retaining, so that it blends with the beach as much as possible. And here we have the note that's additional to what was on the graphic plan, which is that the Parks and Recreation Commission we'll review the impacts of the tree, the tree impacts at 30% design. And the additional water access, we note that we're going to be exploring permit feasibility at 30%. And again, the naturalistic seating on the beach. Moving down here, at the last meeting, we determined that some type of holistic renovation of the pavement in the plaza was necessary. Again, we determined that 1 or 2 bench locations should be cited to maintain the open character, which is how they ended up on the east side of the boiler building. Last meeting, there was one having one picnic table somewhere in the site. I think Chair Struck talked about it being in the area about the trees, but I don't think we got confirmation from the commission. So we'll look at that now. Again, interpretive signage, we've already talked about it being unobtrusive, but there's a little bit more information here that it's on buildings or alongside the trail. Information signage, again, was not, I don't think there was anything specific, so I want to talk about a kiosk today. Exterior lighting, there was some mention about not having it freestanding, but having it mounted on the building. So there's a question we will look at today on removing poles possibly and involving the architect about building mounting. Where decorative elements is the same as last time, de-emphasizing them. We talked about repurposing the handsome bollards if we can't have the bulkhead steps, and a railing must be installed. And then there was I wasn't clear about whether this element called viewing decks and viewpoints was anything concrete. I looked back at the materials from the open house, and that was just referring to the 2 semicircular promontories that stick out into the water from the plaza. They're existing, and if the commission wants to just keep them as is, I don't think there's any action that's needed to be taken here. So it was basically just referring to those and the possibility of having steps or a deck waterward from the bulkhead at the handsome bollards. So those are covered in other places. Last time the outdoor classroom was decided to be included in the plan. We may need to coordinate with the architect on that ramp. That's for future design. The commission gave direction to look at the trees in the plaza holistically with the pavement renovation, and then to show hanging baskets or other temporary containers as an operational decision. So that's a note now. And we will have in a future iteration of this, probably more in 30% design, we will actually have locations for the trees in the plaza. And then the concession stand, last time we talked about it just remaining as is with minor tenant improvements to support boating, class, and rental concession. The idea that concession could sell prepackaged convenience food is an operational decision. So that's where I think we are. And I would like to just go through, I'm going to just actually, since we're going to discuss the grant issues in agenda item number 4, I'm just going to start here at pavement, or maybe just actually start at shoreline access. Does the commission have any questions or things they want to differentiate on any of these elements, these design elements at this point?
On that first one, ADA access to North Beach, on the drawing, that's listed as a ADA accessible path. So maybe we should use that same language,
Okay,
because that's what you're talking about there, I assume.
yep,
Because we got rid of the ramp and decided to replace it with the movable mats in order to move people across the beach into the water.
you're right. You're right, we have to be consistent with nomenclature here, so I think that's a good point.
This is Commissioner Struck. On the non-power landing / launching, I think you've captured there that, we did talk about having a wider beach with the rockery and the benefits of that and the minimized tree impacts. And I guess when I went back and looked at the other document, the evaluation criteria, we did have the impact on the tree canopy being, a high priority. So I guess I would just kind of echo to make sure that as this project moves forward, that maybe we have minimized with a capital M, just to kind of make sure that we're well aware of that.
Great, thank you.
I have a question about the handsome bollards and maybe we could go back to the diagram.
Sure.
The bench, the bench, well, okay. Well, I guess one question about the bench, where is that exactly? Or that's not existing, right?
So you're talking about the benches on the east side of the boiler building?
Yeah.
So there, up until a year ago, there was a bench there. We removed it because we were repairing the Hanson bollards. And we haven't replaced it up to this point. But that seems to be the desired location to sit. It receives morning light. It looks out over the water with a very expansive view. If the benches are right up against the building, they don't block passage through this area. So that's the idea. It's hard to locate a bench elsewhere that doesn't take away from the sense of open space.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't remember talking about that, but then actually my question was more like the Hanson bollards and the steps. I guess I don't understand how can we have the Hanson bollards with those chains and then steps? Or are we not having the chains, but you're still going to have the Hanson bollards and the steps?
I think what Peter Hummel, the landscape architect, suggested was that that maybe the chain remains between groups of 3 or 4 bollards, and that so then the chain is removed between every 4th or 5th bollard to allow passage to the steps, so that the Hanson bollards maintain that chain element, but not continually along the entire bulkhead.
Okay, I think I have to go down there and look at that so they're not, but they're like blocking the steps, right?
If they have a chain, they do block the steps. If the chain is removed, then you'd be able to walk between 2 bollards and access the steps that way. It's similar to stadium seating, where in stadium seating, you often can't just walk down onto the steps. You walk down some kind of aisleway to access the steps.
Yeah, I don't know about that. What do others think? Do you think that seems a little strange?
This is Commissioner Westberg. Well, I think, yeah, the problem is you either have to do something like that, create gaps between bollards where people could walk down to the steps, or you have to move the bollards to some other spot and open that up. And then I had a question, Peter. An earlier drawing I thought had shown that there was a barrier at the bottom of the steps to prevent or water access. Is that the case, or are these going to be open to the water?
This is Paul West. I don't know what the landscape architect was thinking. I don't see anything shown there. I think it's open to the water.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I just noticed in one of the earlier drawings, and I don't know which one it was, that there was a barrier there, like a chain or something like that, to try to discourage people using that to swim from.
Mhm.
Which frankly I wouldn't do myself, but I mean, I would leave them open to the steps. But that's a discussion we could have. I mean, I don't know if then they become, if you don't want swimming there, then you're providing, from the steps, you're providing easy access to the water to, in fact, encourage people to swim. So we'll have to figure that out. But I still like the idea of the steps.
This is Commissioner Struck, kind of to follow on what Commissioner Westberg said. My initial thought was that the steps would be open so people could kind of dangle their feet in the water type of thing, without having to go on the sandy beach and all that kind of good stuff. However, I think he raises a very legitimate point that if it is open, I'm not sure. I guess, yes, it invites swimming, I guess, or it makes it very easy if that's what folks want to do. Again, we don't want to make a big enforcement issue out of this and so forth. And then secondly, to the issue of kind of access and the chains and so forth, I guess I would maybe have to take a look as well. But I think that, as Paul suggested, if you were able to, I don't know how many there total are, but let's say there's 10 with 10 bollards with 9 chains between them, kind of thing, that if 3 or 4 of the chains are removed so that there was kind of multiple access, it wasn't just access on one side or the other, that probably works.
I'm happy to admit that it's not ideal, and I think removing the chain entirely loses the artistic element of the chain. The bollards have meaning with the chain in them that they lose without the chain. So it's, yeah, but it is a slightly awkward situation to have a chain blocking part of the steps and not others.
Yeah, I'm looking, this is Commissioner Westberg. I'm looking at a picture I took down there a while back, and I can't exactly count the number of bollards, but it looks like there's 10. I don't know, Paul.
15 or 16.
15 or 16? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because then you could run a chain from the edges through the first 4 bollards on either side and then leave the center open. And you'd have plenty of access. If there's 16, you could even do the first 5 on either side, leave the center open. But just as an idea. So what do we need to decide on that one? Or is there
I think Commissioner Gualtieri's hesitation is totally legit, and we need to I think the subcommittee needs to come to terms with it. Is this the best choice, having those steps and having the chain removed in sections?
So this is Commissioner Struck. Paul, so are you looking for a solution, if you will, like Rory just suggested, of saying if there's 16, you know, you come in from the sides with chain and then there's a section in the middle that's open that provides the access? Or do you, do every other one or something like that? Or do you just say, you know, we as a concept, we're posing this question, and we'll let the landscape architect and whoever else to kind of noodle with it, and perhaps based on their experience come up with a suggestion for the next round. I'm not really sure where we're at.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of this concept, it's simply that the idea of the steps, this whole thing starts with the steps being there. If the steps are there, is the commission comfortable with having some form of openings between the bollards? In other words, chain removed between some or all of the bollards. If you can, in principle, accept that as a commission, then we can move on. If that's not acceptable, then we either need to negotiate to a more specific solution or, drop the steps as an element.
Lynn, do you have any further thoughts from?
I thought, wasn't there a question about how pertinent the chains were to the artwork that we were going to look into with the artist or the art committee or something? I kind of liked Peter's suggestion of getting some alternative ideas from others and maybe the whole commission. It just seems awkward to me, and I guess I just want to see other solutions rather than getting rid of the steps. Or, I guess I thought when we were talking, I do like the steps, but I thought they were going to be someplace else, not exactly right at the bollards.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the first question was something about how much of those chains is the art, or what exactly is the art in the bollards? Was that something we resolved, or?
We could, how about this? We accept the steps in concept and say we're going to revisit this at 30%. And that will involve the Arts Commission.
Yeah, and how about the rest of the commission?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to just hear, to me, it seems awkward, and I'm not exactly sure why, but I think somebody captured it, or Paul, it was you, and you said, like, we have these steps, these great grand steps, like at Clark Beach, but now it's like half of them are blocked off. It's kind of awkward. And what Rory was bringing up, and Peter, we're inviting people to go down there. I can just see people struggling with kayaks on those steps and jumping over the chains, and it seems awkward to me, but I can't exactly say how or why.
Yeah, well, this is Commissioner Westberg. We're not inviting kayakers to use the steps. They'll have the beach, they'll have the.
But I think they will. That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
can totally see them doing that. It's like.
Well, that would argue then for moving the bollards entirely.
I walk my paddleboard down the steps at Clark Beach.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, you don't have good options there, though.
Yeah, it's just, if there's steps there, I don't know.
No, it's going to invite people to use that for water access. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And so, to me, the sort of the solution, there's two solutions. One that Paul hinted at, which would be, okay, then the bollards take precedent over the steps and we don't put the steps in. Or if we like the steps idea, and we don't even know yet whether they'll be, we can permit those, but for now we'll leave the idea in, and that would argue for moving the bollards.
The other option is that the landscape architect did propose that instead of the steps, that we have a deck extension out over the water that would come off that side and then have a railing on the edge of that deck extension, maybe giving an extra 5 feet on the waterward side of the bollards for water viewing, but then you don't have any, then you don't have the water access attraction. That reduces the pressure on going through the bollards with kayaks or for swimming, or, you know, so I think probably at this stage, showing the steps and saying we're going to revisit this concept in the 30% design phase, because I think you've raised a bunch of good questions, and looking at these alternatives will be useful. I don't think we can get there right now.
No, I agree. This is Mr. Westberg. Yeah, but I think we ought to keep the steps in and then work through the precise design questions and permitting questions down the road. And I wouldn't support the idea of putting a deck in there. I mean, that seems to me totally unnecessary when you have 2 viewing plazas and you have the entire expanse of the docks for people to get out and view the water. You know, why would you put something, unless it was for, well, the docks will be accessible too. So it just seems unnecessary to me. But
Yeah, this is Commissioner Struck. I would agree with Commissioner Westberg regarding Paul, your suggestion or idea that perhaps, you know, we could extend the viewing deck, if you will, there. That doesn't really, I don't think really gains us a whole lot. I come back and I think about just from a stance. I guess there's too many unknowns at this point. I was going to say, well, you know, have the architect come up with something and just say, here's a straw man, you know, view of things, and then we could look at it that way and go from there. But I think your point about, well, at this point, there's probably too many unknowns to really, other than just talk about it as a concept, to move forward. So I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Gualtieri, are you okay with moving forward as discussed? Okay, great.
All right.
So I'm going to just go down to move forward here. I'm going to just go down the list. I'm looking now at the 3rd column on my shared screen. Pavement. We said last meeting that we would come back with alternatives for the pavement. We didn't get to that. I think that's going to have to be something that we figure out in a, you know, again at 30%, because that's a cost consideration, whether we do pavers or concrete or some kind of combination concrete pavers. There's a lot of questions there about aesthetics and so forth. I think that needs more consideration. So does the commission support just showing it the way it is on the diagram now, that the existing pavement will be replaced and that treatment gets determined in the next round?
yeah,
Good, great. Got it.
the important concept there was that we replace the hodgepodge of surface material that's there now with some sort of unifying or more compatible material.
Great. I see thumbs up from Commissioner Gualtieri, and Chair Struck is nodding, so I think we're good there. So the benches on the east side of the boiler building. Remember, this is concept too. It still could change in future design, but right now, having that be the location for benches in concept, acceptable.
So this is Commissioner Struck. Just one kind of clarifying question, Paul. So on the location at this point, I think that's okay. I can't really see a better place for them at this point. The question I have is, would it be anticipated that these benches would be I'll say permanently affixed, or would they be somehow movable? I'm just thinking you put them there. I guess they've been there before, so you probably have a good idea. But kind of what's the thought?
I think the thought is that they're permanent. What we see down there is that things that are not bolted down end up in the water.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a scenario where we could possibly make them so they can be unbolted and taken away, but then we have threaded studs that have to be trip hazard.
I hear you.
It could be done. We could have threaded inserts that go into the ground and have some kind of plug. So if moving them was important, we could accommodate that, but it would be an extra cost. So, all good?
Yep.
Okay, great. A group seating, this is the question is we're not going to locate the picnic table at this point, but the Commissioner Struck suggested the picnic table be somewhere in that grove of 3 trees. I think at last meeting, and I didn't hear other commissioners weigh in on that. We're showing it now as somewhere in that grove to be positioned to be determined based on how the trees are located, et cetera. Is that a reasonable way to go as a concept? Yes, thumbs up, great. All right, interpretive signage. We included the note on the plan. We didn't show locations. I think that's consistent with what was discussed last time. All good? Great. Thumbs up. Okay. So then kiosk. As I've said before, we have the kiosk, the rusty metal mushroom kiosk down there near the entrance to the dock. From an operational standpoint, we need a place to put regulatory and informational signage information that changes periodically. I mean, shellfish closures or, bacterial contamination or what those are things that are news that needs to be able to change over time, and a kiosk allows us to do that. I'm going to propose that a kiosk be located just to the south of the restrooms, between the restrooms and the driveway that goes up the hill, and that's an area that's out of the way. But when you come off the dock, it's straight in your line of sight when you're coming off the dock into the plaza. So if you were walking off the dock, you would see exactly where to go to get information as a boater. And it would be at the edge of the existing pavement area. The other option is to just say a kiosk will be sited somewhere in an unobtrusive location and not call out a location, which is what the note accomplishes right now. I'm just asking if we want to actually locate the kiosk or leave that to a future phase of design.
Paul, this is Commissioner Westberg. Just a question for clarification: is the type of information you envision having on the kiosk, is that primarily for boaters, or is it for general park users as well?
General park users as well. I mean, it's not only for boaters, because things like like a bacterial contamination episode, or people who are there to launch kayaks. There's been talk about having a boater education program for kayakers, or I forget what the boater registration for kayakers, which is a whole separate topic. So there needs to be a ability to have general information for all ranges of users on this location.
Okay, well, I'm okay with, at least as just to throw out a possibility, is to propose putting it where you suggest. Another location that occurs to me would be on the other side of the boiler building, so you'd capture people coming down
Mhm.
the trail, both the ADA trail as well as the existing asphalt trail. And I'm not exactly sure where, up closer to the building, I guess. But either one would work. I think that's sort of, I don't know that we need to solve that today, but
Yeah,
Just-
and we could just, I think it's all legit to just leave the location undetermined too. So if we want, remember that this is going to be something that not only is for the commission and council, but it's going to be seen by the public as to what's expected, and and probably get comments. So the more we can show what we're thinking, the better. I think that's the only argument for showing the location.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Struck. I concur with Paul's suggestion of locating it there. When I was thinking about it beforehand, I kind of agree with Paul's kind of thinking of that. You'd want it as people would walk off the dock, that that there would be that visual sight line to it. Looking at that kind of squiggly line there, which says replace paving along there. That was kind of, on either side of that path. I thought you kind of killed, if you will, two birds with one stone, in the sense you got the dock traffic as well as the path traffic from that side. Obviously, you wouldn't get it from the other side, but anything on the other side, like Roy was suggesting, you would kind of trade that off. So I'm fine with that, as a starting point. And then if people, moving forward, the community or whatever feel strongly it should be located somewhere else, we can have that discussion. Okay.
Any other discussion? All good?
Yep.
Okay, great. Let's go back here. I think the lighting needs to be looked at more closely. I'm inclined to wait and revisit that at 30%. Removing the poles and mounting the lighting on the building may give us dark spots, like when you're coming off the dock, or you're trying to see where the entrance to the dock is. Right now there's a pole right near that entrance. So I kind of think we need to think about that. What is safety purposes only? And if we're going to mount on the building, involve the architect. Anyway, I'd like to I think probably leaving it as it is right now, stating that's for safety purposes. And keep this note, prefer mounting on the building. I think that avoid casting on the water, prefer mounting on the building. Those are all good notes for directing the 30% design, but probably not showing anything different than what we have as the note on the plan. Is that good? Thumbs up.
Paul, I just have a clarifying question about that. Are there any historic preservation protections related to that building, either at a county level or city level, that would?
No.
Okay, good.
It is not designated.
Okay.
So viewpoints we talked about already. Outdoor classroom, we're showing the ramp on the plan.
I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
A question and a concern. And that is I asked the question at our last meeting about how access would be provided to the classroom. I still think the classroom is a good idea. And then Andy flipped up that drawing that showed the concept for the ADA path coming down from the playground area.
Mm-hmm.
None of the concept plans that have been shown to the public to date have shown that ramp. And what was the document he was referring to that had the ramp in there? Was that the master plan for Burbank, or the boiler building plan?
Yeah, that was the boiler building feasibility study.
Okay, so that hasn't been vetted to the public as a specific proposal. I guess my concern is if we go back now and we've got this fairly substantial ramp structure and we probably should show the whole thing. You should show it going all the way up to the playground area, replacing the existing asphalt path. That's a huge addition to the concept, and likely to be somewhat controversial.
Right. And I don't think that, I guess I would think that that's really an element that belongs to the renovation of the boiler building. Like, we don't have to do that ADA access ramp for this project, except to get access to the classroom from the plaza. So I'm inclined to show the ramp to the outdoor classroom and then have it stop and show maybe, future connection to parking lot. I mean, so you're right. I don't want to say the feasibility study for the boiler building had no public review, because it was seen by the Parks and Rec subcommittee at the time for the city council, and Friends of Luther Burbank Park were very much involved in it. But you're right, as a public, and it was, I guess it was, we could have, as your work as a commission to develop a pros plan, it could be incorporated by reference into the pros plan, but that's, you may want to treat it as a unvetted document and have more public review on it. I don't know.
So we could just show the piece of it that would be necessary to provide access to the classroom.
I think that's good.
And that piece could be standalone. I mean, the other part of it may never be built, or at least not be built right away. But in any event, if we're proposing the classroom, we have to show an ability to access the classroom.
Right.
Okay.
So the proposal is to just show the ramp to the classroom. Is that acceptable? Yes.
Yeah. This is Commissioner Stark, Paul. So I agree. Just truncating it at the at the access to the classroom. That's fine. The question I have, just kind of thinking of the future. So if this trail that was proposed, I guess, during the boiler building feasibility study and so forth, if that was never built, would they have to kind of go around and down then? Is that it? Basically, it'd just be a less direct route.
That's correct. So
okay.
With the other connections, they'd go out to the dog park, go down the switchbacks, and then head back along the shoreline.
Right, or they could go past the playground, big toy area, and then go down that pathway as well.
In a wheelchair, that's really steep.
I guess the pavement probably isn't set up for that then.
No, it's pretty sketchy just walking down it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, great. So we're good there. I think and then let's see. Okay, the landscaping, we talked already about replacing the trees, having the hanging baskets, and containers be operational. So we'll propose locations at and 30% design. Is that acceptable? Great. Or are you good with that? Great, okay. And then concession stand, last thing. The concession stand is for boating and rental concession. It's to have an office for those programs. It's not a food operation, but there could be prepackaged food. Yep. Okay.
This is Commissioner Struck. I guess I'll start out at the top and just say, yeah, I'm fine with it. I just think that we should be aware that when we say prepackaged convenience food vending will be an operational decision, I think you'll find that there's probably a vocal subset of the community that will oppose that or be concerned that, well, now we're leaving it to staff, and they're against it, and we're kind of, I won't say shirking our duty, but kind of passing the buck a little bit. So that's just my thought, but I'm fine with it as it is.
Well, this is Commissioner Westford. Do we even have to mention food?
Yeah, we could be silent on it.
We just could be silent on it.
Yeah, I think that would be a better way to go.
And then,
Because I think in the grand
then
scheme of things,
the operational decision would be whether down the road, whether to allow
yeah,
a concessioner to sell
right.
soda pop, candy
Yeah.
bars, whatever, out of that window as they're doing other things, renting boats and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's the first sentence there is kind of the prevailing issue, and I think the second one, I wouldn't want to have the kind of tail wagging the dog, so to speak. So.
Got it. All right, I think we're done with this agenda item.
Can I just, I'm sorry, can I just ask one more question? I wanted to direct Lynn's attention to it under public art, where it says, and we talked about this, so this gets back to the bollards, not to beat the bollards to death, but the question we addressed last time was that if we didn't build the steps, the bollards don't meet current standards for a guardrail. And it was awkward to have a guardrail and the bollards in that same location. And so we talked about moving, if we don't build the steps, that we would move the bollards, potentially have to move the bollards. Is that okay? I mean, that doesn't contradict what we talked about before. I think we're still okay. I just wanted to make sure you had seen that and you were okay with that.
Wait, if we don't build the steps, then, and if we have to have a railing, then we're going to move the bollards. Is that what you just said?
That was the discussion last time, because
Yeah.
because the railing would have to be placed behind the bollards. And so you would have a guardrail, and then next to it, you would have the bollards with presumably with their chain. And the thought was that there may not be room for both, or that might be too much or whatever. And the element we introduced with this discussion was, well, even with the steps, the bollards might not work
Yeah.
well because of impeding access to the steps.
Yeah. I remember all that.
Okay, but I think we're okay with that statement. Still, I mean, what we talked about earlier with regard to if we have the steps, I don't think that changes that at all. I just wanted to point that out and make sure everybody was okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rory. That's a good reminder.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And back to you, Chair Struck.
Okay, so I believe the Next item on the agenda was the evaluation criteria document, and we were
Oh,
going to
yes, that's right.
just kind of go through that. And if Paul can share his screen on that one again.
So we're not going to go through this in the same detail. We just went through the list of elements. But the idea here is that we came up with the commission came up with a set of criteria and ranked them in priority. And then I used my knowledge of the different alternatives to provide an evaluation of each alternative with regard to how well it met the criteria, and how well it met the group criteria. There's a reason I say that, because some of the criteria, have a negative connotation, and meeting them works against the group criteria. So anyway, and what I want to have is a final product to show the full commission and council and regulatory agencies and granting agencies is how the preferred concept that we decide on rates against the things that the ideas that we originally proposed. And so this is an effort to do that. I've had a discussion about this with the chair this morning, and realized, it would be really helpful to probably have another column next to preferred concept that would say, kind of just give some notes about what the considerations were in the ranking of the preferred concept. I think that will help people understand what these numbers really mean. But for example, dock access, under ADA compliance dock access, alternative 1 was not very good because it had no finger piers, and finger piers seem to be key to having people be able to get from a wheelchair into either a kayak or a small power boat. Alternative 2 had some finger piers, and alternative 3 had more finger piers. So those were ranked higher, and the preferred concept has a decent amount of finger piers, so I ranked that as similar to alternative number 3 in terms of the ability of somebody in a wheelchair being able to use the dock for accessing boats, and for people in boats being able to access the docks. So that's just an example of how I thought about this. Another example is aquatic environment. The docks are an impact on the aquatic environment. And so alternative 1 was slightly better than the other 2 alternatives because it was less overwater coverage. The alternatives 2 and 3 are the same overwater coverage as the preferred concept, essentially. So they have the same level of aquatic environmental impact. So that's the intention here. This product doesn't, I don't really think we have time to spend on this right now, but if the commissioners could work with this product a little bit between now and our March 10th meeting, and I also want to show this to the full commission at the March 4th meeting. I think we'll get we can take some feedback on it at those 2 opportunities and revise it if it needs revising. Again, it's really a demonstration of where we think we've gotten after refining the preferred concept.
Thank you, Paul. This is Commissioner Struck. Let me just give you kind of the way I looked at it. And as Paul mentioned, I had a conversation with him this morning. So the way I kind of look at this is, again, if you start at the top with the different columns. So you recall that the full commission, we went through a process where we ranked and said, is these elements, are they required or not? And you can see that yes, no column. And then we went further and we said, well, what's the priority of each one of these elements, high, medium, or low? And then what, as Paul just explained, what he did is he looked at each of the three initial alternatives and gave them a score, if you will, or a ranking from least beneficial to most, and then kind of where he thinks that the preferred concept, as we've kind of where we landed, if you will, kind of what that number is. And so what I did is I just tried to go down and said, well, if the priority was high, I looked at, generally I would say you'd want to be, in the 4 and 5 range, for example. And, if it was a low item, you'd probably say, I'm okay with a 1 or a 2. And if it's a medium, it's probably somewhere in the middle. And I think that kind of schematic or thinking works pretty well. Now there's a couple of examples where you got to kind of say, ooh, does it really work? So for example, like what was just mentioned under environmental impact, the aquatic environment JARPA, the full group gave it a high ranking, but as you can see, the alternatives ranked 3, 2, 2. So there is really no 4 or 5 there under the alternatives, and we ended up on a preferred concept at about a 2. So you'd say, well, yeah, given the alternatives, I think we're probably okay. And I went down those, and I think by and large, I think we hit the mark. Pretty well. If you go down to the non-required criteria, the lower half of the table, down under improved safety and security, social distancing protocols is listed there, and that had a low priority. And you can see that under the 3 alternatives, it was a 5, a 2, and a 4, and we actually ended up at a 5. And you'd say, well, maybe maybe there should have been more under 2, or if you will, or why not that? That maybe was one kind of discrepancy. But then I kind of said, well, at the end of the day, that's probably it's not required, and it's probably not that big of a deal. But other than that, I think we kind of carried out to a very large extent, kind of where the full commission, had their priorities placed.
This is Commissioner Westberg. So and looking at the aquatic environment one, I agree. I mean, you'd like to see that one higher, but I think, Paul, you were scoring it based simply on square footage of dock.
That's right. Yes.
And not recognizing that there's other factors that will go into that, including replacing solid concrete docks with an open type material that will allow light to get through to the water underneath. So maybe all those scores should be higher. If you consider the aspects of the dock design and material as entering into it, as well as square footage of water coverage.
Yeah, and I think that's worth considering. I just talked, I've talked to enough, fisheries folks and the biologists from the Muckleshoots tribe, and you're right, the concrete docks are considered awful. And that they would get a 1 or even a 0. I don't know, they're so, but I think that, it's hard to give a dock a 4 or a 5. I mean that to me somehow implies that they're good for the environment, or, I don't know. So I'm willing to change the scoring there, but I think docks are hard on fish, and I think I felt like to be consistent, I needed to have the ranking illustrate that. I could change it.
No, I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I'm just saying that there's more that goes into that than simply the water coverage of the dock
Right.
system. But it's fine. It sticks out a little, but there's an explanation for it.
Mhm.
I think in statistics class, we call that a multivariate analysis. But so Paul, from your perspective or staff's perspective, is there any one of these elements or criteria that kind of jumps out at you there where we kind of missed the mark, if I can use that term? Or does everything kind of, from your perspective, look like it's in the ballpark?
Yeah, no, I think this is a good result. From a project manager standpoint, my biggest concern is funding feasibility. So I'm, I think we have something that is, fundable for various reasons. Some of which are that they will score well, and they, given the commission's work on this, you can demonstrate community support. We've listened to and incorporated, a lot of the comment and feedback we got through the open house and through commission meetings and so forth. So that's the one that just, I, don't really know until we have a budget.
Okay.
But everything else, I think is right on. I mean, I think we've, there's a, weighing different things, and I think there's a good balance here.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Just a quick question. So the feedback you'll be looking for from the whole commission will be, do your ratings, particularly of the preferred concept, seem okay? Does anybody have any quibble with where you put things,
Right.
how you rated things?
Right, and which is why I want to put in a notes column, because I think that'll help explain that, how I got to things. And then if people want to use different factors, we can discuss that. But yes, the question is to the full commission is, does this make sense?
Okay. All right. We'll look forward to the next iteration of this document before the full commission.
Great.
Next, item number 4 was, Paul, you wanted to talk a little bit more about grant funding issues. So
Yep. Really quick, let me oops. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to share a new screen. So there's just two things. This should be pretty quick. I did a fairly quick calculation of how many powerboat moorage spaces do we have on the current dock configuration, and how many non-motorized boat spaces do we have on the non-motorized dock. This is around the concept of proration. You remember that the cost of the breakwater, or the expense of creating a breakwater instead of a dock at the outer dock, is going to have to be shared between the two docks that we build. And how that gets prorated is typically by how many spaces for the kinds of boats that are going to be tying up at those docks. I just wanted to report to the commission that I calculate we have 21 spaces, 21 moorage sites for the small power boats on the outer dock, and we have 17 spaces for non-motorized boats, kayaks, canoes, small sailboats on the inner dock. And so that gives you a proration split of 55% power to 45% non-motorized. And I think that's interesting. It's interesting to think that the inner dock will have to share that 45% of the breakwater cost. I think it's appropriate. I actually think it's a good split. It's like, when we go to the funders, the breakwater is having a big benefit for power boating, and the benefit that it has for the non-motorized boats is covered in the portion that the non-motorized boats benefit from. So that's one funding piece. The other one is the Recreation and Conservation Office does compliance visits every few years. And one of the things they gave us a little bit of a hard time on the last time they did compliance was using the docks for our sailing camps and our kayaking camps. We can do that, but we have to have what they call what do they call it? It's called a use agreement, or
A conditional use permit or something?
it's what do they? Oh, user certification. We have to do what they call a user certification, where we submit our proposal for using their dock for business enterprise, and then they can set a whole bunch of conditions about how we can use it. And we could probably work that out, but I have a better idea. We currently have a 10 by 50 floating dock that has grading. We have to check and make sure the grading is open enough, or we have to put on new grading. We have a 10 by 50 float that the city paid for, was not paid for by any grants. It's a 16-inch high freeboard. It could go in this first section where we have a 16-inch freeboard, 75-foot float, and then connect that to a longer section of the lower freeboard float out here. And I think these finger docks would move out to the low freeboard float. But what this gets us is it gets us a piece of dock that we can say, that's for our sailing programs and our kayak programs, and you can't hassle us for using it that way. And we could still apply for a use certification for the rest of the dock. But if push comes to shove and they give us a hard time for using the rest of the dock for our boating concessions, we say, fine, we're not going to use them. We're going to use the piece of dock that we own. In addition, it probably saves us some money, which is a good thing. But it's as much the jurisdiction issue that I'm concerned about. That we get this big, beautiful dock for non-motorized boats, and they are like, you can only use it from, September to September to May for your rental concession. I'm like, that doesn't do us any good. That's like that we lose the whole summer. They can make those conditions, and I'm like, I prefer us to have something guaranteed that we have dedicated to our rental concession and our classes and our camps and so forth. So we didn't show that in the current concept because I hadn't been able to explain that. But if the commissioners are willing, we would the version of this diagram that we would take to the full commission would show that existing float in this location and show a longer section of lower freeboard float.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I'm all for reusing what we've got and what we own. So that just makes good sense. And if it helps reduce the overall project costs, that's even better, and gives us flexibility as far as programming.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Struck. I would second what Commissioner Westberg just said. One question though, from an aesthetics point of view. So if I'm on the shore kind of looking at this, brand new dock, is there going to be this one section that just kind of looks out of character because it's 15 years old or whatever?
Well, it's all about the decking. So if we put on new decking, then they'll look like the same as everything else.
Okay.
But if and I think we probably will, because I think they upped the decking opening from 50% to 60%. So I think that's going to be what we do, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. I wouldn't have use a phrase I did before, tail wag the dog, but I guess I just think about that. If you could, if you're going to build something brand new, you try to make it all look nice. So,
yeah.
Good idea.
This is Commissioner Gualtieri. Paul, I have a question. What would you have done with that floating dock?
I think it would have just gone away.
Oh. Yeah, well, that makes sense. And use it, own it, of course, yeah.
I mean, it may be not as big as we would like. I mean, I don't even know. It's served our sailing program for, I don't know, 8 years or something like that. So it seemed to work out. That size dock seemed to work out just fine. So yeah, why not reuse it? Okay, great. Thank you. So that's that part of the agenda. So I think the last thing is back to you, Chair Strzok.
Yep. Okay, so the last item was just to have a kind of a brief discussion on the presentation of the full Park and Recs Commission on March 4th, which I believe is a week from Thursday. So I think we kind of have two issues to discuss briefly. One is timing, and then second, in terms of if we want to do any kind of review, and then secondly is kind of the contents. Perhaps starting with the contents first. Again, I'll defer to staff because they put these together all the time. But again, I think is, what we'd want to do is really have kind of three components, if you will. One is what I'm going to call somewhat of either a principles, or even I can talk to it, but just kind of overview of kind of what we were really trying to set out to do. Then we can kind of dive deeper into kind of the criteria, and kind of how we went through the process of choosing the alternatives we did and so forth. And again, we're not going to get into every one, but just kind of at a high level, kind of just the process we went through. And then obviously just, at the end, show the plan. And again, a number of these documents that we've talked about today in the previous meetings would be part of that. Does that sound like, are there things that I'm missing that you say, oh, we should make sure we have this or that in it?
Just the question. So we're really it's an update for the whole commission. It's not a decision meeting. We're just letting them know where we are and how we got there. And then we should also let them know next steps.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, very, very good. Because ultimately, and I don't have the timetable in front of me, Paul or Ryan, but I mean, they'll want this to, get the approval of the full commission, and then that will be transmitted to the council for final approval, if you will. Or I guess we would do the approval / recommendation, and then they would go to the council. But so on the meeting of next week of March 4th, yes, it would be an update. The other commissioners would really see it for the first time, because right now all they've seen are the three alternatives, and kind of here's where we landed. Obviously they could ask questions, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully there wouldn't be too many, but who knows. And then we as a subcommittee, I believe, would go away and finalize things and bring it back for one last review / acceptance and recommendation to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd look for feedback from anybody that thought we really missed the boat somewhere.
Well, and I think that there will at one of the maybe it's the next full commission meeting when we show this, there would be a chance for public engagement or comment. so they would see the preferred concept and, add their 2 cents.
Yeah, we might want to do a little bit of, before the April 1st meeting, we may want to do a little bit of, public notification about that this is coming up to the commission's
Yeah.
final
Yeah.
approval, so that we get that engagement.
Yep.
Yeah, I would recommend that we do that even ahead of this coming meeting. It's really the best time for public to react to what's been put forward, to the questions on setting up the meeting and sort of heating up the conversation. I think Chair Westbrook shared really well what we would be looking for. I would ask that Paul create a staff report that really shares the background of the process that we've gone through, that seemingly for the commission has worked really well through the Aubrey Davis trail improvements and sort of how we're working these projects going forward. So a little bit of background there, and then really enjoyed opening up the floor and watching the commission really talk as a group has been very informative, I think, and really shows the deliberation that's gone on previous. So I'd anticipate this agenda item being 45 minutes, something along there, with a very short introduction, and then
Right.
the rest being conversation around the topic.
Are we gonna call out certain topics, maybe that certain aspects of the preferred concept that we want their input from? I mean, we're not gonna go line by line, all that stuff, but like the handsome bollards and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I mean, I know you said, I hope there aren't too many questions, but I bet there will be. So that's Rory, I appreciate your asking, like, are we just telling them what we already decided? Or are we saying, and now we want your input, but on these 3 little things that, I don't know how you want to handle that.
I would one thing I
Part
would
of telling-
encourage. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say, I think part of telling the story is saying where we, where we weren't able to go any further. So I think Hanson Bollards is one of those situations, plaza paving, the tree impacts at the widened beach, we're going to go back, we're going to look at those through permitting. So I think highlighting where we're still unsure would help them probably know where they'll still have a chance to influence the project. And then I think probably the just highlighting some of the things that are pretty certain, that it seemed like, like the commission, the subcommittee really liked, really went along with the current dock configuration, the outdoor classroom. I mean, there were some things that the 3 of you were,
Right.
pretty solid about. I think it's worth highlighting those 2. I think then that gets those off the table unless there's somebody who has a real, issue with one of them.
Yeah, and this is Commissioner Struck. I think that we talked earlier, Paul, on this criteria worksheet, adding that column where you kind of have a little bit of descriptor as to kind of why we landed where we landed and so forth, I think will again go a long ways. And also I think if I was on one of the commissioners that was not involved in this, the first thing I'd be doing, as I talked earlier, was to kind of say, well, we had kind of set out these priorities and so forth, and does the concept generally meet those? And again, everybody will probably have a little bit different ideas on this, but again, I think a lot of the stuff everybody will be in pretty good concurrence with. And I think that the other thing is that again, this is still just a preferred concept, and so while we're going to move it forward, there's still going to be opportunities if things kind of would go sideways, which again I doubt, but that it's not final type of thing.
The other thing that I will do when we send out the packet is request namely the other commissioners not a part of this conversation, that they submit any questions they may have after reviewing the materials. That'll help
Yeah.
us in our initial presentation, just to provide that information up front, to provide for an efficient meeting. So happy to do that.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Westbrook. Paul, this is just a question relating to the discussion we had earlier about the beach. Are we in a position to say categorically that we will not, even though we're talking about widening the beach, that we will not affect any mature trees? Just take that off the table? Because you had talked about a couple of sucker trees that might be in the way, growing out of the roots of some of the Lombardy poplars there. But
Right.
if we could be
Yes.
as categorical as saying, we're not going to affect any mature trees.
I can actually I can go, a step further and just take a picture of the area and show it to the commissioners. I think it's pretty clear that the two poplar suckers are not a big deal.
Yeah.
I think the picture will tell the story.
And I'm thinking about that for not just for the commission, but for the public as well, that, we know
Right.
some people are very concerned about trees.
Yes.
And rightly so.
Yep.
So,
Yep. I think that's a really, really good point. I will take some good pictures and that make that a fairly clear part of the presentation of what is the impact.
Okay. So, the meeting is scheduled for a week. I know is it
Next Thursday.
Thursday. Okay, so you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, you have 3 days to put it.
3 days. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see it when we see it then, and we'll go from there.
Well, and Commissioner Struck, I will probably run some of my report by you to make sure that it's going to frame the topic so that
Okay.
there's going to be a piece where you wanted to talk about your principles at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice if the staff report paralleled the presentation so I'm going to draft something and then have you take a look at it probably.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
would
right.
almost encourage Paul to include Peter as almost a co-author of the staff report, because it is something that will be coming from a subcommittee of the commission, as opposed to coming from staff.
Mhm.
And then just on timing wise, we have a meeting scheduled for the 25th, specific to the recreation reset plan. I don't want to bombard you with too much information ahead of that meeting. So more than likely our commission packet will go out on Friday morning for the following meeting.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Before I adjourn here, any final comments or thoughts? All right. So the next scheduled meeting of the Luther Burbank Dock Subcommittee is Wednesday, March 10th at 3 p.m. The time is now 4:35 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to participants, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening and stay safe and healthy. Thank you.